The Hummer is one of those vehicles that seem to dominate public consciousness for a short span before suddenly fading from the spotlight. Its trajectory, from cultural phenomenon to obsolescence, was remarkably swift. In fact, the original production cycle lasted less than 2 decades, and it only enjoyed real cultural relevance for maybe half that time. Nothing demonstrates this pattern more clearly than a sales graph that illustrates how dramatically interest surged and then plummeted. It's astonishing to think that in 2006, Hummer sales peaked with over 70,000 units sold, only for the brand to be completely shut down by May 2010. I've always found these rapid ascents and descents fascinating. Products that capture a moment in time like this often become symbols of an era, evoking a sense of nostalgia for many, myself included. I was a teenager during the height of the Hummer craze in 2006, and I remember vividly how heads would turn when one passed by. Whether people admired them or criticized them, strong opinions surrounded the vehicle. In truth, the Hummer might just be one of the most bizarre, yet oddly captivating mass-produced vehicles to ever exist. This piece is my attempt to revisit the Hummer's strange journey, how it went from a military workhorse to a celebrity accessory and eventually to a cautionary tale. Let's explore the story by breaking down its rise, dominance, and eventual fall. The Hummer's origins lie in a much more rugged and utilitarian past. Nearly everyone agrees that it wasn't exactly the most practical option for everyday consumers, and that's largely due to the fact that it began life as a military vehicle. Long before it became a commercial symbol of excess, it was engineered for battlefield mobility and resilience. We've seen this kind of military-to-civilian evolution before. For example, after World War II, the Jeep, another military vehicle, was successfully adapted for everyday drivers. Something similar occurred in the 1970s when American Motors Corporation acquired the manufacturer of Jeeps and formed a subsidiary called AM General, tasked with producing vehicles for the U.S. military. By the end of that decade, AM General was working on a new project, the High Mobility Multi-Purpose Wheeled Vehicle, more commonly referred to by its acronym HMMWV. Thankfully, it was shortened to Humvee for ease of pronunciation. As its name suggests, it was built to be highly capable across a wide range of terrains, serving as a robust and reliable tool for soldiers. In 1983, AM General secured a multi-billion-dollar military contract to manufacture thousands of Humvees. These vehicles proved particularly valuable during the Gulf War in the early 1990s. That conflict marked the point when most Americans were first introduced to the Humvee, as news coverage often showed them maneuvering through the desert. Even the U.S. president at the time rode in one while visiting troops. The imagery cemented the vehicle's association with strength and dependability. It's hard to imagine a better advertisement for toughness and reliability than seeing a vehicle perform under life-or-death conditions. Unsurprisingly, the Humvee began attracting admiration from civilians. People saw it as a symbol of power and resilience, even if they had no practical use for one. Among those admirers was Arnold Schwarzenegger. Schwarzenegger, who was at the height of his action hero fame, played a pivotal role in bringing the Hummer to the civilian market. He reportedly contacted AM General and suggested they consider building a version of the Humvee for everyday drivers. After some persuasive conversations, they decided to make a few modifications to the vehicle, adding amenities like air conditioning and a radio, and release it to the public. In 1992, the civilian version of the Humvee, now officially called the Hummer, went on sale in the U.S. The first buyer? Arnold himself. However, despite the buzz, the vehicle faced numerous challenges in adapting to a non-military environment. It lacked many basic safety features like airbags and child locks. Its sheer size made it difficult to park and drive in urban areas. On top of that, it was prohibitively expensive. These limitations meant that sales remained modest through the 1990s. Fewer than 10,000 units were sold in that first decade. The customer base was extremely narrow, mostly limited to those who were obsessed with the brand or who wanted to make a very bold statement. It became a sort of cult vehicle, one people liked to admire from afar, but few actually wanted to own. Everything changed in 1999. General Motors, then the largest automaker in the world, acquired the rights to market and distribute the Hummer brand. This was a turning point. GM brought not only money, but also massive resources and marketing expertise to the table. Almost immediately, the original Hummer was rebranded as the H1, and GM began developing a new, more consumer-friendly version, the H2. The H2 was introduced in 2002 and addressed many of the criticisms of the H1. It was smaller, safer, slightly more fuel-efficient, and significantly cheaper. Though it still remained larger and more imposing than most vehicles on the road, these changes helped it appeal to a much wider audience. The marketing push from GM was enormous, and celebrities quickly jumped on board. The H2 appeared in films, like Bad Boys 2, and in music videos. LeBron James famously received one for his 18th birthday, causing controversy and even triggering an investigation by Ohio's High School Athletics Association. In short, the Hummer had gone from military machine to pop culture icon in just a few short years. Sales exploded. By looking at the graph again, it's clear that the H2 drove a surge in popularity starting in 2002. What was once a niche vehicle had now broken into the mainstream. Just a few years later, GM attempted to replicate the success by launching the H3 in 2005. This version was even smaller and more affordable, opening the door for more budget-conscious consumers who still wanted the Hummer name and aesthetic. And it worked, for a while. Sales saw a noticeable bump again. However, this revival was brief. By 2007, numbers were already dipping. And by 2008, GM was actively seeking a buyer for the brand. In 2009, a deal was struck to sell Hummer to a lesser-known Chinese manufacturer specializing in heavy equipment. Unfortunately, that deal fell through in 2010 after the Chinese government failed to approve it. Without a buyer or a clear path forward, GM shut down production entirely just months later. By 2010, the Hummer story seemed to be over. One article summed it up by stating that GM would wind down its iconic but tarnished Hummer brand. The word tarnished may sound harsh, but it wasn't inaccurate. The brand's image had shifted from bold and cool to bloated and out of touch. A number of factors had worked against it, and while the downfall was swift, it was not entirely surprising. First and foremost, let's revisit a fundamental truth. The Hummer was never meant to be a consumer vehicle. It was designed for extreme environments, battlefields, deserts, and rugged terrain, not city streets and suburban driveways. By nature, it was always going to be excessive for the average driver. If we were to pinpoint one major reason for its downfall, it would likely be fuel consumption. It might seem ridiculous to claim that an entire vehicle brand failed due to poor gas mileage, but in this case, it's not that far-fetched. The Hummer became synonymous with inefficiency. The term gas guzzler was probably applied to it more than any other car. Even the H2, the more modest version, weighed nearly 3 tons, so much that it didn't qualify for official EPA fuel economy ratings at the time. Estimates put it at around 10 miles per gallon in city driving. That's astonishingly low. There were both ecological and economic implications to this inefficiency. During the 2000s, environmental consciousness was on the rise. Hybrid vehicles like the Toyota Prius were gaining traction, and documentaries like An Inconvenient Truth, released in 2006, highlighted the environmental impact of gas-guzzling cars. Hummers, being the poster child for inefficiency, became easy targets. In addition, the financial burden of owning such a vehicle became more pronounced. As fuel prices soared and the Great Recession took hold, consumers tightened their belts. From 2002 to 2008, The average price of gasoline in the US more than doubled. People simply couldn't justify spending hundreds of dollars a month just to fuel their car. In fact, public pushback became more extreme. In 2003, vandals set fire to 20 H2Ss at a dealership as a form of protest. Even Schwarzenegger, once the brand's most vocal supporter, began distancing himself. While campaigning for governor of California, he promised to convert one of his Hummers to run on hydrogen. Though he followed through, the vehicle had a range of just 50 miles per refueling, far from practical. Eventually, reports indicated that he had sold most of his Hummers and rarely drove the ones he kept. The Hummer, once a symbol of power and extravagance, had become a scapegoat for environmental degradation and consumer irresponsibility. Another contributing factor was General Motors itself. The company faced major financial troubles during this period, culminating in a bankruptcy filing in 2009. In the aftermath, GM opted to scale down its operations, shedding brands that were underperforming or misaligned with the company's new vision. Hummer, along with Pontiac and Saturn, didn't make the cut. These were brands that no longer seemed sustainable or strategically important. In many ways, Hummer was doomed not just by its flaws, but also by timing and circumstance. And yet, despite all of this, Hummer wasn't finished. In a surprising twist, the brand made a comeback in 2020. During that year's Super Bowl, GMC unveiled a commercial for the Hummer EV, a fully electric version of the legendary vehicle, starring none other than LeBron James. Though the switch to electric power addressed the fuel efficiency issue, many of the old criticisms resurfaced. The Hummer EV was still massive, heavy, and expensive, but it was also incredibly powerful, boasting impressive performance specs. While sales have not come close to the numbers seen in 2006, they have been solid. Whether or not Hummer can reclaim a significant role in the auto market remains to be seen. What's clear is that the brand still provokes strong reactions. For some, it's a symbol of excess and impracticality that never should have existed. For others, it's an iconic, bold design that stands out in a sea of look-alike SUVs. As we look back, the Hummer story encapsulates a lot: military innovation, celebrity culture, environmental awakening, and the highs and lows of corporate strategy. What do you think? Is Hummer a relic of a bygone era or a misunderstood gem that deserves a second chance? And did this overview capture the rise and fall accurately, or is there more that should be said? Share your thoughts, whether about the Humvee, H1, H2, H3, or the new EV, in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think.